Okay, we're starting to go live.
Well,
always takes a minute.
no, this is funky because I need to do it from Chrome. I tried to do it from the YouTube app.
Mm.
And while it...
Hey, we got a couple people showing up.
No, I'll be out there in a minute.
4 people. Hey guys. Hi Diana. How are you?
There we go.
She says good afternoon. Ruth says hi Siofra. Hi Ruth. Got 5 people. We've had a surprise week. It's one of the reasons I didn't get a video done this week. We had surprise visitors. Started off Wednesday morning with a knock on the door. Surprise! Someone you haven't seen for 20 years standing on your door. And I did not recognize him. It was pretty funny. I'm like, hello? Diana says that I am good. It's a wonderful day. Dan says hello everyone. Hi Dan. Yeah, he just sort of stood there and I looked at him. He says, you don't recognize me, do you? I said, no. So then he told me his name. I'm like, oh yes, I know you. You can come in. So it was like, it was a big surprise. It was one of those weird things that happen with technology. My phone suddenly decided I wasn't actually on a network, and so I wasn't receiving any phone calls or anything. No texts, messages, or... Yeah. So, yeah, it came out of the blue. So he was here for a few hours. I had to go to work, and he took Ian down to the beach, and they went down to the beach together for a while and just had fun. Hi, Jonathan. So, yeah, it was sort of a surprise. And then my son called and said, we're flying up. So they arrived last night and stayed in a CD hotel for $200 a night, which was a shock. Apparently right now our prices are extremely outrageous for our area, in my opinion. And so then they've been over talking and stuff. They're looking for a place to buy. So that was that was fun. We got to see them for a couple of hours this morning. And visit and catch up a little bit and see the video walkthrough of the house they're going to look at this afternoon. So they're planning on moving up here, so I am very excited about that. And they're leaving tonight to go back up to Eugene to fly out tomorrow morning to go back to California. So yeah, sort of a real instant, spontaneous, out of the blue influx of people that we were happy to see, which is a lot nicer than the opposite, yep. Which we've gotten in the past, yep. Not that long ago, you know, with visits from people who are crazy and don't know what they're doing. So, XCOM Jack X says, hi, madam. Hello, XCOM, I guess I shall call you for short. Welcome. We are having a free-for-all conversation today, so whatever you guys want to talk about, I'm up for it. We didn't have a video that got out this week because of all the sudden surprise visits, and it just didn't have a subject that grabbed me. Right, resonated is probably a better word. I kept thinking and thinking and thinking, and I was like, yeah, not inspired at the moment, so yay. Yeah, so it's been interesting. So my granddaughter's here, so she's still here. And the fairies that have been visiting me in my room on a regular basis have started coming back now that she's settled in. So I'm getting the wonderful smells back in my room, not every night, but every couple of nights or so. So that's been nice to know that they're still hanging around. So I was tickled about that, but nothing like out of the blue or extraordinary as far as encounters at the moment. It's just been normal, back to normal kind of thing. So, Athusa says, hi, Siofra, Ian, and everyone. Hi, Athusa. So, oh, and we have another friend coming next weekend. So she's going to be arriving, so we'll have her. So it's like just a sudden, like, we had the friend from Texas who popped in unexpectedly, and then the friend from my husband's past, he actually knew my husband before we met. So that's a long-standing relationship, which is kind of nice. Yep. Hi, Canary. And that was a good relationship. It's probably the only person from his past that he was interested in really seeing. So
yeah, for sure.
So that was kind of nice. And then, of course, my son and his wife, and now my friend from up in Portland is coming down. Jonathan says, I'm so glad you don't just put out videos for the sake of putting out videos. Bless you. Well, thank you. I try to make them, like, meaningful, have a purpose, not just for putting them out. I figure there's 100 videos out there right now, so people could entertain themselves if they wanted to.
Over those Wile E. Coyote cartoons.
Yeah. So, Jonathan says, hi, Canary. So, yeah, it's sort of, Lunasa Lamas has come and both have come and gone, and we're heading into the fall equinox here, or the spring equinox in the southern hemisphere. So there's a sort of the beginnings of a subtle shift I can feel. John McMahon says, hi from Ireland. Hi, which part of Ireland? Which, northeast, south, or west? Just out of curiosity. And, yeah, we're doing pretty well. I'm still having to deal with the hand from time to time, but it's continuing to improve, and I'm able to bead and stuff like that, so that's been good to get back into some craft. Dublin. Okay, so that would be northeast part. Our family's from Sligo County, so you know where my family tree comes from, since I'm not as familiar with everywhere as, since I've not been able to visit yet. My mom has, but not me. Apparently my granddaughter has a plan. When she becomes an attorney, she's going to take me to Ireland, so get ready in 10 years for me to come and visit. East, okay. So I was sort of close, at least I got in the right general vicinity, but just east. Alright. Yeah, so welcome. So what do you guys want to talk about today? I mean, anything's happening that you're curious about? I know last time we talked a little bit about wall crawlers, and it looks like my grandson may be moving into one of the apartment buildings that I did in a investigation in that was covered with wall crawlers, so we'll see how that goes. Not sure exactly which one he's moving into yet, so I'm not sure if it's the same one, but I'd be curious. Canary says, I've spent 4 hours waiting for an order to come, and then they said I had to pay because the driver said he came but he didn't. Just felt the need to vent. The online talk people were awful. I am sorry. That's annoying, especially when they're telling you things happened that didn't. Frustrating. Somebody else maybe got your stuff. Jonathan says, any more Price of Magic insights? I'm starting to believe that for me personally, strong magic throws me off balance for 2 weeks minimum. That could be a matter of practice and experience. Like, the more you're into it, the longer you do it, the less that type of an effect is likely to happen. But you certainly are going to get, it's like if you expend a certain amount of energy and you don't have a way to recharge those batteries that you're expending, then I would expect that it would be a little bit of a thing. And also when you're doing that kind of intense work, you're having an altered state. And altered states by their nature can make you feel off kilter for a while, because then you're trying to come back to a quote-unquote normal state. And so there's an adjustment period there if you're not used to the flying back and forth between those two states on a regular basis. John says, do you know Biddy Early? If so, what do you think about her? No, I don't know Biddy Early, so I have no thoughts on the subject. Sorry. At least I don't lie. I have thoughts on everything. You know, if I can answer a question, I will. If I can't, I'll let you know I can't. Canary says, I've been looking at more advanced books on magic, but I just don't know what ones are for me or worthwhile ordering online, so I can't sample. Sometimes they'll let you look at a couple of chapters online before you order it, so that could give you an idea, or at least look at the table of contents. Although that's not always an indication. They can say all kinds of things in the table of contents, and then the chapter might be like, a page long or a paragraph or something on the subject. So, G Little says hi from Detroit. Hi, G Little. Yeah, so it's like there's always that risk if you can't see it ahead of time to know what it's going to be like. I mean, you can learn something from anything. At the least, you can learn it wasn't for you. Maybe you can resell it or to someone else.
Well, at least, unlike regular books, you don't get one that has bad energy attached to it like you can with a actual paper one.
So John says, okay, thank you. She's a famous wise woman. What do you think of the she fairies? Well, I kind of have a relationship with them and regular encounters with them, and I think that there's a lot of bad information about them and what they are and how they act and how they interact and so forth with humans, and based on old stories that were written by the church in order to dissuade the public from having anything to do with them. So that's one of the reasons why I've done a number of videos on the she and on the fae, and I've been encountering them since I was like 4, so 67 years or so that I've had some interactions with them. Jonathan says, synchronicity on a completely different endeavor. I found Barden actually describes shadow people and crawlers. He calls them shadows and phantoms, respectively. Absolutely interesting.
Yeah, I believe that's only in the second version of the book that was added.
So a newer published version.
Right. He did one revision on his first book, and I believe that's when that stuff came up. I don't believe it's actually in the first version. But Barton himself did the revision.
Right. Well, that's good.
At the time, so, yeah.
Cool. It is interesting. Canary says, my grandfather is helping me move on Tuesday. I have anxiety about how he will react to some of my stuff. You might want to wrap your stuff up before he gets there. Hide your stuff. If you're worried about his reactions to it, it's a good idea to package it already or wrap it up in some cloth or fabric of some kind so that it's not obvious what it is, depending on what it is, and so forth. Because I can understand that, because a lot of people aren't going to know what you're talking about. Diana says, both my maid and I were active duty military. We just retired at the same time. Both are learning about the spiritual side of magic and trying to find ourselves. Any suggestions on where to start? Well, see, that's the nice thing about this path. It doesn't matter where you actually start the path. You can dive into almost any subject, and it should lead you back to the center. It's kind of like a large ball of connected stuff.
Sure, throw on a fish hook wherever you're interested.
Yeah, whatever your interests are, whether they're in divination and tarot, or whether they're in personal self-development, or, the rituals that are involved with it, it'll all lead you back into the core of it. I have a lot of videos up on the site right now, like what's my purpose, beginning witches, where do I start, which gives you some ideas of things that you can do in order to get started on the path. For me, this path is definitely about personal self-development and taking personal responsibility for my own actions and becoming a self-defined individual. And that's what I think that, it's learning what's in my subconscious and my unconscious and finding ways to address the issues that I have and to change the energy of some of those things that are in me to make them work for me. I did put up that cup transformation ritual for that purpose, to help people take control over their inner world. And you can't take control over an inner world that you don't know exists. So you have to like start acknowledging it first, and that's one of the ways to do that. And they talk about shadow work a lot, especially in the beginning, because people are often afraid of things and they don't know that they're afraid of them until they encounter them. We've had random people who've, come into our group, discover they're afraid of things that we go, what? over, like black candles or robes, and we have these unconscious associations with things that we've never looked at because we've never needed to. They're kind of like just sitting there waiting. And when you start on the path, you start to encounter those things. And for some people, that will stop them in their tracks, and they'll just turn around and say, this isn't for me, I don't want to deal with this stuff, or this is telling me that this is a bad thing to do. And for other people, it's an opportunity to face a fear or anxiety or a programming that they've acquired without conscious knowledge. And then they can examine that program and then decide if it's something worth keeping or something to set aside and to challenge and say, that really doesn't work. I mean, we do it without knowing that we're doing it to survive when we're children. And whatever adaptations we make that help us to survive, they become part of our fabric, of our spirit, personality, and actions and reactions to people and stimulus. And so that's part of what this is about, is finding out what those unconscious assumptions about how reality works are, and then addressing them and deciding whether they're still true or not, whatever helps you to survive. So Canary says he has no idea his granddaughter is a witch. Yeah, that would be the reason for hiding your stuff. Ruth says, I have been seeing Santa Muerte. Okay, the saint of death. Santa Muerte is death, isn't it? Saint Death?
I think that's what that is, though I'm not familiar with
death
that exact
spirit
term.
Sort of the Mexican or Spanish term for that. Canary says, yeah, might have to do that. He's gonna see the big tapestry about divination I've stuck on the wall. Well, those things are kind of hard to hide. So Ivan says, hi, hope you are doing good. I was just wondering, what is your view on addiction and the anger that comes with it? Love you and thank you for everything. Okay, so addiction is a tricky thing because it from a magical perspective, spiritually speaking, it creates larvae that feed off of the addiction. So whatever the addiction is, whether it's, tobacco or drugs, either legal or non, whatever it happens to be, if it's something that somebody is become physically addictive to, then it's going to create that spiritual larva that's sort of like a parasitic pseudo life that kind of survives as long as the addiction takes place. So to get free of that kind of thing, you have to figure out how to starve that larva. And
yeah, they have a sense of self-protection, so it'll try to keep you hooked on the whatever the addiction is. It'll go out of its way to create things that might make you want to break down and do it again.
Triggers.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that happens when people are getting off of certain types of addictive substances is then they have to change all the people they hang out with. Because if you're hanging out with people who are doing the same activity that you're trying to break, then their larvae are going to get upset because they can tell that you're doing that, and then they're going to want to try and pull you back into the activity so that they feel comfortable again and don't have to be challenged by your change of perspective. And there's a lot of things that can be addictive, not just substances, but behaviors and things like that, and they can all do the same type of thing. So it's a challenge for sure. I was lucky, even though I come from a family that had a lot of addiction. My father was an alcoholic. My brother got into some strange drugs when he was younger. And, mostly everybody else in my family was addicted to tobacco, so I never had the desire to do it. And when I did, my second husband got me into doing some cocaine at one point because the guy he was working for was giving it to him. And when I discovered I was becoming addicted to it, I could tell by the feeling I had about doing it, I stopped. And I'm not sure how I can do that. I'm unique that way. It's not something that's easy for most people to do. So I don't expect that that's going to be simple for other people. I'm just glad that I have that. I don't know if it's an overviewer or something like that that just says, okay, stop that now before it's too late. So I've been lucky. I've known other people who've had addictions that they wanted to quit and how challenging it can be.
Yeah, well, I think in other than the actual physical addiction, as in my body's out of something, it's going to die if it doesn't get it. I'm sorry, I missed a lot of sleep, so I forget where the rest of that sentence was going. So I'm going to abort that one.
Okay then, no problem. So Canary says, yeah, at first for me it was hard to tell whether my energy didn't like something or if it was just programming. I'm very good at it now, though, I think. Good. I mean, that's what, self-definition is about. You're choosing what path you're going to become a part of, and a conscious decision instead of something that just is automatically pushed toward because of who you were born around and where you were born and all that other stuff. So good for you. Jill says, hi Canary, good luck on moving, hope everything works out for you. Jonathan says, Santa Muerte, is she the Mexican death goddess? That's a question we all had. Diana says, thank you so very much. You're welcome. Canary says that Jill, thank you. Ruth says, yes. So I guess that's answer to that is the Mexican death goddess. Canary says, it was funny when the penny dropped with my other grandparents, realized I wasn't just getting crystals because I liked the look of them. I didn't like those. Oh, new though. Okay, that one I'm not sure about. Those ones, though. Okay. It says, is seeing her good or bad? I guess that depends upon your point of view, because being able to face the imminence of your death is one of those things that is important for us to do, to realize the mortality of us. So seeing death is not necessarily a sign that you're about to die, I don't think. I think it can be being able to stand within the dark, what we consider the dark goddess energy of destruction and death and chaos, means accepting the other half of existence and becoming comfortable with that, because change is death. Any change is a form of death. If you're like with the other question, an addiction, a part of you is dying when you get off of it, because then you're not in that space anymore, so that's a certain type of death. And any kind of change is going to generate that potential. And I know one of the long distance healings I did for the woman who was in the hospital with a brain tumor, it was her fear of death that kept her tumor from healing, which was interesting because when I visited her in the mental plane, I saw death at her bedside as this terrifying aspect and worked with her on the other planes to accept the possibility. And when she did, it changed form completely. And then her tumor went away. So, there's no one answer to those things. So Melissa says, hello from Cork, Ireland. Oh, another one from Ireland. Hi, Melissa.
And you notice they got the flags. Got a flag in there.
Oh, all right.
And the one from Australia down below.
I haven't gotten there yet. Ivan says, it all made sense, though. Thank you so very much. I appreciate you more than I can express in words. Thank you. You're welcome, Ivan. Taryn says, hello from Australia. All right. So you're from down under. Ian says, thank you for visiting our channel from so many places. Gary Piombino says, hello, happy Sunday. Hope you all had a good Friday the 13th. Loretta just had her birthday the 14th. We had a great day. Only a few things went weird on Friday. We had a crazy thunderstorm. Well, Friday the 13th are one of my favorite days because so many people are afraid of it. There aren't as many people on the road. So most of the time when I travel on the road on a Friday the 13th, I'm less likely to have to avoid crazy idiots that are doing something unexpected. Jonathan says, any stone crystal experiences this week? Really excellent remarks on addiction. Well, I'm glad you like them. I've been experimenting with the angelite and the apatite and putting them in my pocket, one in each side during the day. I don't have them right now. I didn't put them in this morning. And discovering that they help me feel focused and energized. But if I leave them in for too long, then I feel the opposite. Kind of like in the evening, just sort of, oh, I have been trying to be energized for way too long. I need to get these stones out of my pocket. And so I'm experimenting with those. And then I switch it out for like the lapis and the moonstone. So some calming, relaxing kind of stones. But so far, that's all I've been playing around with this week. Ruth says, okay, thank you. I'm getting warm. It's warm here today. The windows are open, but it's still plenty warm here today. We're starting the middle of our drought. Ruth says, I'm in Michigan. Well, good. Not sure why that's a laughable thing. Are you the one who said you were from Detroit, which would be in Michigan, or is that someone else? There's someone else up here from Michigan as well. So, yeah, I was thinking about boundaries this week and trying to come up with some way to describe better what I mean by boundaries. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't make a video, because I was mulling over different approaches to what is that. She said, no, she's not the one. Okay. So we have 2 people from Michigan. So, Melissa, Jill, says, love stones and crystals, been using them for calm and relaxing another. Yeah, me too. I think my first stone I fell in love with was the amethyst, and it's still one of my favorites. Melissa says, at Taryn, how's Oz? I have sisters over there in Sydney. Lockdown sucks. Oh, with the COVID thing? Not easy. They're all working in healthcare. Hope it all turns good soon. It is kind of scary here, too, right now. We're really having an explosion of cases in our local area. We had one day where, and we're a small community, we had like 72 new cases in a single 24-hour period. It's just like, So we still need to do a lot of work on that. So G. Little says, it's 2 of us Michiganders. Michiganders. Michiganders?
There you go.
I don't know.
Probably not Michigooses.
Jonathan says, can you feel us? You said something to someone during the healing circle which made me think you can feel us. I can sometimes feel you, yes. And it's interesting. It's sort of like a different kind of network, energetic network. Because I'm sitting here and you're thinking about me and seeing me, and, I sense and thought forms a lot, and people's energy, and they all feel a little bit different. So on that level, I do feel people. Ruth says, laugh out loud. Yep. Melissa says, very hard times, sending love to all. Yes, we still have a ways yet to go. So, oh well. That's the way things are. Every age has got its challenge. You okay? It says here that I am offline. Check your connection and try again.
What?
It says I'm connected. And it's not going away this time.
Nope, our internet went down.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, really?
Yep. Yep, our internet went down.
I also work in healthcare. Hope things get better soon. Well,
go back in and see.
We may be at the end of our video.
Ask Zipley why their fiber keeps going down.
Yeah, Ivan says you are here though. Okay, he says that we're here.
Did it come back up?
It says that we're connected. It says here that YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming.
Okay, so it's like being...
Okay, so it's being in and out. Okay. We're just going to assume everything's working, whether it says it's working or not.
I don't think we have anything downloading or anything.
No, we don't have anything up and on and downloading.
I'll go check anyway, though.
You could turn off my phone. Louisa says, hi, I'm new. Hi, Louisa. John says, you're back. Okay, so I don't know why this is happening, but hopefully, I guess we'll just deal with it. G Little says, I hope you can feel my joy. My family and I just rescued the cutest black kitten ever. John Quinn says, I see you too. Well, we had a kitten explosion out in front yard. When we went outside, when my son was leaving, him and his wife, there were these 4 little kittens from next door that were so little they could jump through the holes in our chain link fence, and they just started popping through into our yard from next door. So I had to pick one up. It didn't weigh anything. It's just like, wow. Jonathan says, you're back. Thanks for your answer. I think I might be an emotional vampire. Are there signs I can look out for? I don't want to be a vampire. Okay, maybe you could give me more information about what you think are the signs of being an emotional vampire. Do you think that you're like making people act or feel a certain way and being energized by that? Diana says, we see you. Boy, I wish they'd stop telling me, not you, but my computer would stop telling me I'm not there. Canary says, anyone had any experience with Morgana Le Fay? I wanted to take my chances at contacting her, but I've been warned by people not to. Are those the people that think that all the fairies are bad? I would, assume, since she's supposedly one of those, maybe? G Little says, you're working on our end. Canary says, at John O, if you don't want to be a vampire, you're probably not a vampire. Jonathan says, taking energy from others for myself. Okay. The cure for that, if that is indeed happening, instead of taking energy from others, you take it from the earth. So practice that rooting thing, the sacred tree meditation with the rooting to the ground. It's like makes that connection. So you're getting energy from the place we're supposed to be getting energy from, which is, freely available from the planet, or the breathing exercises to bring the energy in. And carry like a piece of hematite maybe with you, which will help keep you grounded, and see if that changes the dynamics that you're worried about. Because a lot of times energy vampires know that that's what they're doing. So, and a real energy vampire doesn't think there's anything wrong with what they're doing because they're taking energy the other person doesn't know that they're giving, because they're not aware of their environment or their energy field as much, which I think is a circular logic kind of situation to justify or rationalize the activity. But that would be my recommendation if you're worried about it, and try that. G Little says, that too cute. Yes, they were very cute. I picked up this little black kitten and it's like air.
Well, they're small enough to go through the
holes in the fence.
Chain link fence.
Yeah, and it was like air. I'm like, there's this wiggling thing and it's moving around, but it doesn't really have any weight to it. It's just so adorable. Okay, so Canary says, no, by other people like me, said she's bad. Morgan Le Fay. Well, I don't know. I mean, she's a figurehead. I mean, I don't know. She's worried about getting in touch with Morgan Le Fay.
Yeah, that's a pantheon I have no experience with myself, so, yeah.
So Jonathan said, thanks, Canary. That's kind of what I thought. I'm just in a weird place. Canary says, slightly concerned that that didn't necessarily make me less intrigued by her. You mean by Morgan Le Fay? Canary, Morgana is Fae, is a Morgan sea spirit called Mergen in Ireland. So John McMahon knows more about it. And, okay, people warn other people about getting in touch with the Fae all the time. I get chewed out for talking about them from some people because they think it's irresponsible for me because I might be encouraging them to get in touch with something that's dangerous. I have never had a negative experience with any of them, and so I don't have any, personal stories of caution to tell. And I think that generally speaking, it's the attitude of the person who's approaching the spirit that determines the outcome. Because if you think about it, if they live in a different dimension of more, pure spirit, energetically speaking, they're dealing with our energy. And if we're not aware of our own energy and what it's doing, we don't know what kind of impression we might be making. So the more clear we are, probably the better impression we make and the better capable and able we are to have a positive encounter. And in my experience, as a rule, if they don't want to have anything to do with you, there is nothing you can do to get them to be interested in you at all. They're like, if you're really pushy, they might get annoyed and, slap you back and say, hey, leave me alone. But, it's kind of like if you saw someone really interesting and read about them and thought this would be really cool to meet them, but you didn't know anything about them, and you showed up on their doorstep at 2 o'clock in the morning and started banging on their door saying, hey, let me in, I want to talk to you because I think you're interesting, what kind of reaction would you get? So I would think making an introduction and waiting to see if there's a response. Because in my experience with the Shi around here, if they find you interesting, they're going to come around and check you out, and they have found me interesting and have come around and checked me out. So I haven't gone looking for them. They kind of come look for me and, develop trust in a relationship as time goes on. So Gary says, we had an amazing black cat. She was a great familiar. Yeah, I like black cats. Canary says, at John, oh, you're welcome. At John, I thought she was a nature spirit not specific to water. Jonathan says, I've got a hematite piece. Do you think your rings kept breaking because Faye don't like iron? I don't know. Because it's okay if I have a piece of hematite in my pocket. It's just wearing the rings. I think it's because they're brittle and I keep hitting them. Because they tend to be on my middle finger. And if I'm touching something, that's like because of the way my joints are, it's like the first thing that hits. I don't know. But I can wear hematite jewelry other than a ring. But I don't know that they actually hate iron. Because it's part of the earth. That might be another one of those things that, just people say. Canary says, in some stories about her, she is evil, but in the first ones about her written are positive. Well, remember where the people have their experiences with her. And, it's like, they're people. They're flawed, and they don't know necessarily what they're talking about, too. Any experience with her at John? Canary, Morgan, Muir, C, Gan, born. She may have been later confused with the Morrigan. John says she is also a saint. Canary says, hey, I'm probably going to do it. I have an itch I need to scratch now. So, experiment and see what happens. Melissa says, Fae choose their people. Usually it's a trust in nature. I feel never had any negative experience. So like me. I mean, they've been around me since I was like 4 years old. So they approached me from the time I can remember. I think to comfort me because of my life, parents, childhood, and whatnot. Canary says, at John, yeah, I also thought that when researching, because the Morrigan is a Celtic goddess around at a similar time, no? Yeah, there's a lot of different pantheons out there. And that's That's one of the things I like about paganism, is that there is probably an energy form of a god or a goddess out there that will suit whatever need you may have. Canary says, from the people I talk to, it's not the Fae that they have a problem with, it's Morgan specifically. Well, that could be a fear of power. I mean, we have to remember whenever anybody gives us information, we don't know the entire context of their life and their experience and where that decision about what's good and bad has come from. Sometimes what other people have defined as bad may not be bad for you. Apparently we have a Stellar J out there who's starting to talk. I recognize that sound. So, and those are human conceptions, good, bad, kind of thing. And, energy is energy. Energy isn't good or bad. Energy just exists. Some of it is there to destroy, take apart, and dissolve into smaller components. And some of it is there to put together and combine and make new things. But neither one, it's not like bad energy is taking things apart, good energy is putting things together. Without the one, you couldn't have the other. We have to have both for balance. And so try to remember that when you're deciding on other people's opinions of what's going on, whether it's valid or not. Like there are some people who just don't like any of the dark goddesses at all. So, John says, Liban is a water goddess who was reborn as Saint Morgan in Brittany. These Morgans live in waters. Jonathan's church says, that's not entirely true. That two-headed dragon scared you, rightfully so. Well, actually, it didn't scare me. It made me very cautious, though. That wasn't a fae. That was something else different. That was a completely different kind of thing. John says, I think it's because they confuse Morgana with Morgana War Goddess. Who knows for sure exactly who's confusing what with whom and why. That's like I'm saying, context in the individual's mind is everything, depending on what personal experiences that they've had and what they've been taught, and whether they've actually looked at that or not and dissected it and decided whether it's valid or not. It's like people rumor mill in human terms. Something happens and you get 30 people all saying different things about that person now that something has happened to them, about what they think is going on. And in most cases, none of the things they say turn out to be true. So, I don't know. Canary says, I feel an affinity with Anubis, and I hear a lot of stories about him, and I have had zero problems. Thanks for the advice, everyone. If I feel drawn to her, it could be for a reason. Yes, it could be for a reason. Yeah, I definitely got Anubis visiting me once, and that was not a problem. People have a fear of death in general and of power that they don't understand. So, and that's sort of, what this path is about, learning how to become your own power to maneuver your way through some of these forces and figure out where things are. But the two-headed dragon was not a fae. That's like an ancient spirit that had nothing to do with the fae or with us. It's like a completely different category of being. And yeah, he was big. And powerful. So Hyperion Dawn says, so grateful to have caught the live show. Going through a divorce seems to be the trade for spiritual growth.
Unfortunate. It can be.
Yeah. Sometimes when people change too much internally, and a partner isn't able to accept a change, then that can mean the end of a relationship too. It's a good thing he and I were so weird when we met. And we're still weirdly the same. Even though we've changed a lot, we've been changing in the same kind of ways. So it works.
Getting stranger and stranger.
That's right. Everything is getting strange. Whee! But yeah, I've gone through a few of those. In fact, during my first Saturn return was when I was getting a divorce, getting together with David, and starting to channel. Gary says, could you tell us more about the horned god? Well, the horned god is sort of an overall representation of positive male creative energy, often associated with Pan or Cernunnos or, other similar types of gods that are out there. Represents that the creative juices of life, that get life going. So, the spring when all of the animals are procreating and creating and stuff like that would be the energy of the horned god. And a lot of cultures had a representation like that. And there is a saying, horny as an old goat, and I met a goat once who really liked me a lot, and I had to hide in a building with a flight of stairs to stay away from him. So apparently there's a reason for that saying, but I think that goats in general were known to be very out there with their feelings, and maybe that's how that got associated with it. Yeah, it's just sort of funny. His name was Morgan. He was a big goat. Met him up in the Kispiox Valley when I first got there. Marisol says, hi. Hi, Marisol. At John. Jonathan says, at Canary, I envy you. I haven't had a god or goddess look for me. I've reached out to the horned god and Aphrodite because they seem awesome. Nisha says, amorous goats. Yes, very amorous goats. Morgan was a special guy. The people who were there were kind of surprised because they'd never seen him act like that before. And of course, I had never met a goat, so I was also surprised. He actually climbed the stairs and tried to get into the house. John McMahon says, Lieben Mergen, yes, I think she has a great energy, Canary. So, and I think too, when it comes to spirits, gods, and goddesses, they have a lot of different aspects. And depending upon who you are, you may actually encounter a completely different version of the same deity, energy, or whatever, and have a completely different experience with it because, we're not one-dimensional, and I can't imagine that our gods and goddesses would be either. It's like, depends on the mood you're in and how you're feeling about things, as, which one of me you get, as far as that goes. We're never just like one thing or another. We're complex. And that's good, it keeps things a lot more interesting. So Louisa says, I feel so drawn to witchcraft and paganism, but I don't know where to start. It's so much. That's why I did that video. So you want to be a witch, where do I start? Try that one first. And it is, if you try to do it all at once, it's like with the beading stuff that I do, I only put on 2 beads at a time, and so you can't tell what the whole thing is going to look like until it gets more complete, and then you can sort of get an idea of what the finished product is going to be. And paganism is like that. It's like it's a whole collection of things, and you slowly build your own version of what you're doing. So Canary says, at Jono, I think it's because I dedicated myself in past lives to other gods. Maybe you should just send a wish out there and see who responds. And at John, nice to know. Louisa says, okay, thanks, gonna check it out. And I have a section, a playlist of basics. So depending on what part of it you want to learn, you can focus on, what a circle is and how to make one, and working with the elements and so forth. And it is. It's like if you try to do it all at once, it's overwhelming. But if you take it in small bites and small pieces, and you learn something, one thing will lead to another, and then that can change over time. Like I started out with tarot in high school, so 1964, I guess, is when I started studying the tarot. I really don't do tarot anymore. It's like you go through different phases, stages of development and interest, and you can move from one thing to another. I was a channel for quite a few years, and I'm not really doing much of that anymore. So it doesn't have to stay one thing. Just because you find yourself interested in it, it can change and move. Melissa says, I wanted to thank you personally for the group healing. My son is autistic, considered nonverbal, and has started to talk more. Wow! Thanks to everyone who took part. That is awesome. We're so pleased. John says, mermaiden energy. Hyperion says, Apollo and Bast are two that really mean a lot to me. Bast is the queen of mind games. Canary says, I've noticed people get scared when other beings have emotions, like just want beings like angels that are a bit more predictable, if that makes sense. Well, people aren't in boxes. I don't see why spirits would be. But yeah, they're worried. Hyperion Dawn has 666 at the end of their name, and some people are afraid of those three numbers. There was like a person at the DMV in Oregon who was freaking out because his randomly assigned license plate had 666 in it, and he was making a big stink about it and wanted them to change his number because that was an evil number. Like, it's just a number. It has nothing to do with anything at all unless one ascribes something to it and uses it that way. Besides which, it never had anything to do with beasts anyway. It was more the number of man or the sun.
Oh yes, it's supposed to be the number of a man.
And anyway, some gods act like they've been waiting for you, and some of them probably have been. They've probably been wandering around in the periphery for a while going like, that one looks like a good one. Maybe they'll notice me. So Canary says that John, in my mind, I see her connected to the forest and lakes. Could be wrong. Oh yes, thought I remember now reading how she was at the gate of Avalon, somewhere over the ocean. That would be from the stories of King Arthur and some of the books written about that. Melissa says, I know it, Jonathan. And then John McMahon says that Canary, the deities are not bound to any one thing. And Canary says the 666 thing is hilarious, yes. And Jonathan says, is Bast a shortening of Bastet? I think so. At John, Canary says to Earth, I think I needed to have a chat with you, some reassurance. All right. Because, whenever you're developing a personal relationship with someone, whether they're a god, a goddess, a spirit, or another person, there's always things maybe about them that you don't know. And you get to know them, And with people, they always generally put their best foot forward, and then you don't find out about the warts until it's too late. So hey, if you can find out about the warts ahead of time, that's good. Canary says, yeah, she has appeared in the Legend of Arthur, is connected to other things as well. There's a lot of different stories out there. There's the British Isles stories, and the Welsh stories, and the Scottish stories, and the Irish and the Celtic stories, and it's like there's a whole rich history of things and different names, sometimes connected, sometimes not, even though they might be the same name. But it's always a good idea to stay on your toes and see what happens. It's a fascinating universe out there. Danny Lamb says, I'm learning a lot. Good. Learning is a good thing. At least I hope learning is a good thing. I would assume that learning is a good thing. So, I always like learning. I'm always learning new things myself. That's what keeps you young. It keeps your brain working. Your main brain working. XCOM says 666 is the number of material creation. That's why it is put on the opposite of pure spirit. That's the Genesis. Well, that would be one way of looking at it. I'm not into numerology myself. And Ian knows more about that subject than I do. Jill says, that's good. It's fun too. Okay. So, Canary says, I've decided to do it. I'll let you all know how it goes. That's assuming she will even respond. Marisol sent me $3.99. Thank you, Marisol. I appreciate the support. How sweet. It's always nice to feel supported.
Sorry, I'm not talking much because I'm just sleepy. I can't think of anything to say.
He had a no sleep last night. Louisa said, yesterday my cat brought a dragonfly inside. She barely catches anything. What does it mean? She ended up eating it, by the way. Well, I mean, it depends upon your traditions, doesn't it? I mean, dragonflies in some places are supposed to be messages from the spirit. They're just really cool to look at, and I like them. They eat a lot of mosquitoes, which is cool. And apparently they fed your cat, so they had another purpose. I don't know. Jonathan says, this is something I've been wondering about for a while now. When I contact Aphrodite, who I think is amazing, how much of her do you think is a collective thought form as opposed to her? Well, that's a good question because...
It is a good question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a not necessarily easy to answer that question. It depends, I guess, on the interactions that you have. I'm not really sure how to approach that.
Well, one way that I've approached that type of thing, if I want to try to get back more towards the original God form, I go back to the older images and pictures of statues and things like that, and try to contact that earlier energy if that's what a person wants to get in contact with, as more perhaps the original idea or original archetype. Just a thought.
I think depending on what your interaction is like, when they're completely and totally out of the blue, I haven't been trying to get a hold of them at all, and then all of a sudden they show up fully formed and, like, say, hey, I'm likely to consider that is probably not a thought form because I wasn't trying to get in touch with that energy at all. Like, when Argus showed up at Starhawk's workshop that I took, I had no clue that Argus might be related to her work, and he just sort of showed up and did his thing, and it was intense and overwhelming and amazing and unexpected, and I wasn't prepared for doing anything like that. It just sort of happened. And so, on one level we may never know for sure because our thoughts are going to influence everything that we see, our perceptions of those thoughts, and our mindset and where we are and stuff. But in general, if they feel like they're external, I accept them as that, regardless of how they might have come to be.
Yeah, and I don't know. I know that when I tried to get in contact with the energy of some Hindu beings, Anandamayi Ma was one of them. She's a woman saint, Hindu saint, and she was recent enough to have pictures of her, photographs online and stuff. And when I got in contact with that energy, the first thing I noticed was a big rush of energy from all her followers and worshipers who were convinced she was a goddess, and that sort of, with that particular experience, that kind of overwhelmed everything else, so I could get in touch right with what they were feeling about her. I don't know that I made any contact with her, she was rather famous and her image has gotten rather big and well worshipped, well known at this point. I definitely couldn't tell the difference, but I could tell that a lot of it was the worshippers, because there were things like being able to sense different pictures and photographs and things that had been worshipped that were connected to that whole massive energy.
Yeah, so I guess at the end of it all, it's like you decide. And the clearer you are, the more likely you are to connect with something that's more.
Yeah, if you get a good clairvoyance, and can succeed like Barton talks about in his books, then you definitely be able to tell. I'm not that good.
Okay, so Gary says, have you ever conducted a seance, and what would you do to only contact who you want to talk to? Well, I've been in a few seances, but I've not really done seances per se, like trying to talk to a specific person who's passed. I had that happen to me once. My daughter brought a friend of hers for a Moida session, which is my spirit guide, and the girl's mother had passed over from drowning fairly recently. And in that case, it just sort of happened spontaneously because the girl was there. And when Moida first started talking about, in general, about what happened, then this mother just suddenly came through and just started talking. I mean, it was instant. And I've had other times when similar things, like the first time my channeling ability sort of exploded, my clairvoyance exploded. I ended up channeling my second husband's grandmother, whom I'd never met, and she came to tell us that his father was going to die soon. So I think that the ability to decide who you're going to talk to would depend upon how close the individuals who are there are to the spirit that you're trying to connect with, and how capable the medium might be to be able to allow that to happen, because it's a very subjective experience when it comes down to it. Some are better than others.
Yeah, it depends a lot on natural abilities, elemental balance of the people, all kinds of stuff.
And sometimes who you think you want to talk to is not who you need to hear from, I guess, because they're like, they see things from a different perspective. So Jill says, cats like bringing their owners gifts. Yes, they do. And they're supposed to be graciously accepted because they're foregoing eating the food if they give it to you. And that's like a high honor. So Amanda says, what would be a good way to do a whole house energy cleanse? I put small cups of salt on windowsills and near doorways. Will this work? If so, how often should I change it out? So I did a video on house cleansing. If you need to do a full-on house cleansing, I don't use salt in particular in my cleansing, except added to my water as an element of earth, representation of that. Salt is purifying, disinfecting, and earthy. But the focus that everyone has on putting it on windowsills and door sills and stuff pretty much comes from the show Supernatural, making circles of salt and whatnot. It's become very popularized by that. And, if you believe in it, I'm sure that it works. But you shouldn't have to be cleansing a house all the time unless you aren't creating enough positive energy in the house to start with in order to keep a house light. So I would focus more on doing things that bring positive energy into the house on a regular basis, and at which point negative energy won't accumulate and you won't need a cleanse. But watch some of the videos we've done on that, and one of them is called Ghost Proofing Your House, so it has other things in there besides just, getting rid of the ghosts. So Nisha says, so would that be like reaching out to Ariadne as a Minoan nature goddess before the Greeks reduced her down to the beloved of Dionysus?
I would say yes, pretty much. That would be the idea.
Yeah, because one of the things we know about mythology is a good example of how cultures have changed their attitudes towards things. Goddesses were a lot stronger and more powerful in the beginning, and then the hordes came in from the north or whatever and started taking over the different cultures and started changing the stories. And, the heroes were born that overturned the goddesses and took charge, and then the gods were born, and they were all on top, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I would say so. John says thumbs up to Canary. Jonathan says thanks, Ian. Thanks, Siofra. You guys are incredibly insightful. Well, I'm glad if I remembered what I said. You're welcome. Melissa says, at Amanda, garlic is great at the four corners of the outside of your home. That's if you're afraid of vampires. Inside floor wash with salt water, even better if you add some from the sea. And again, that depends upon your tradition and upon your particular tools that you use. That's not necessarily true for everybody. Jill says salt works, and there's other ways to cleanse. Sometimes I changed it once a week. Sometimes I wait. I don't do it at all. My house is self-cleaning at this point. Jonathan says, I'm not sure why you guys aren't doing more spell work. There are obviously things you want. Why not add spiritual intention to those things? Well, the universe is working with me on all of those things. We now have a contract for our roof. It's going to be repaired, and we're working with the doctor. I do stuff as I feel I need it, and I guess I don't feel I need it. The assistance at the moment. Danny Lamb says, what are your thoughts on Florida water? Florida water is one of those hoodoo types of waters for cleansing things, and it probably works as well as it says, if that's what you want to use. I mean, there's just so many different traditions and stuff out there. If it fits your mindset, I mean, that's the thing. It's like none of these things are an absolute. Whether it's garlic or salt or rice or Florida water or 4 Thieves vinegar or anything like that. These are just tools that you use in order to focus your mind and your energy and your concentration in order to get the effect that you're looking for. And so if the images and the symbolism doesn't work for you, doing them isn't going to work for you. So you've got to find these things that work with your own internal universe.
And you're comfortable with.
And that you're comfortable with. Joel says, thank you for your insight. And that's the thing. That's why I talk about a lot of the stuff that I do, but it's stuff that I do and stuff that works for me. And, yeah. What you're going to get here are my thoughts and Ian's thoughts on whatever these things are. And you have your own thoughts, and that's good. Because we all want everyone to have their own thoughts. That's part of the whole process. To become a self-determined, self-defined person. But remembering that it's yours, not someone else's.
I like to be a person.
You like to be a person?
I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. There's so many different possible ways of doing everything out there. But belief is a big part of it. Like if you believe that you need to do it, then you need to do it. If you believe you don't need to do it, then you don't need to do it. You know, if that's a genuine thing that's in there.
I mean, yeah, it's not. We don't want to make it too loose, though.
Yeah,
there are rules,
right?
Just like rules of science. There's rules of magic. That the better you adhere to them, the more results you're going to get.
Well, there's a language of the universe,
but
right?
The most important thing is definitely your intention and what you're putting out. Willpower.
Yeah, it's definitely not totally simple and straightforward. Like, I believe this has happened, this is going to happen. Maybe for some people. Danny Lamb says, thank you so much for doing this for us. I love listening to you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Apparently I like to talk, so it's good that people want to listen.
There you go.
I'm a storyteller, what can I say? I love a good story. Runs in the family. All of us are like that. Of course, some of us are too detail-oriented in their stories. They get stuck in the details and forget the whole picture, but hey, that's not me. That's someone else in the family. But yeah, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. That's one of the things I like about being in a life, really. We've been watching shows on the mushrooms lately, so that's been interesting to learn about the stuff through the ground, the mycelium, and how it's connected with everything. And of course, we're in Oregon. We have the largest single organism in the world. It's like 300 square miles, something like that.
Huge amount of acreage.
Huge amount, or maybe 300 acres, not square miles. Okay, I don't know, but it's big anyway. And it's, the largest single organism in the world, and it's a mycelium. It's the underground part. It doesn't show up on the surface except here and there with the mushroom part, but it helps the trees to communicate with each other. So the thing is that everything is so interconnected with everything else, and the mycelium is a good example of how that interconnection works through the fibers of the ground and allows the trees to talk to one another. So
it says it's a honey mushroom.
Yes, a honey mushroom.
And he said it covers 3,726,563 square meters of Malheur National Forest.
Well, all right then. I don't know how many acres that is.
Meters squared, that many meters squared anyway.
Hyperion says, I think I'm watching the same fungus documentary. Yeah, I've been hearing about it for a while, so it is kind of interesting to they're getting more and more information about them and their role and being able to use them for getting rid of carbons. And
I thought you'd like the picture they used for the article.
I know, it's not, it doesn't look like that. I see that on Facebook a lot. They have this giant, huge mushroom that they put up on their meme, and it's like, no, it doesn't look like that. It's underground. It's not above ground. So, yeah. But yeah, it's, the more we understand about nature and how it works together, the better able we are to figure out our part, I think. Jill says, you will learn a lot here. So.
Oh, I lost my chat thing here. Sorry.
Ian's finding his chat thing.
There it is.
He found it. It's not gone. Yay. But yeah. So, language is the thing that we depend on to try and communicate. And language is the thing that we often misunderstand when we're talking to each other. So, communication is the key to understanding what it is we're talking about, really. Because people can mean so many different things by what they say, using even the same words.
Yeah, well, and even the translation that goes through, because you got this idea or concept, and you want to transmit it to somebody else, so you got to turn it into words and hope those words describe somewhat the idea that you're working on. Then you give those words to somebody else and hope they get the same picture back.
Yeah, and it doesn't always work that way. I've had many experiences where I say something that I think is straightforward and simple to somebody, and then it goes in their brain, and I don't know, it spins around in there and bounces off of past experiences and expectations and projections and whatever, and then comes out as something completely different than what I meant by what I said.
Yeah, well, it's like everybody's, when you transfer it to them, it's like they're all seeing it through different pieces of stained glass anyway, with, everybody's life filters that life has given them.
So Gary says, yes, we love the conversation and sharing spiritually. Jonathan says, magic is new to me. I'm still finding the happy middle ground. Right now I'm thinking, add magic to everything, anything, why not? That's why I'm so fascinated with the price of magic conversation.
Well, and that's a kind of a valid point about Siofra and I. It's kind of a lifestyle. It no longer becomes something we do. It's something we live.
So here's an example of the universe lending me a hand without me knowing it until afterwards. So I was driving down the road going to the store, and my brakes were squeaking. On one brake, the front passenger brake, was like making a funny sound. So I'm thinking, I wonder if there's something wrong with my brake, or if there's just something stuck in it that's making the sound that squeaks. And as I'm thinking this, all of a sudden 2 deer come flying out of the woods and jump right in front of my car. And I have to slam on my brakes really, really hard, like otherwise I'm going to hit the deer. and then I watch the deer go by, and then I wait for a minute to make sure there's not more deer on the way, and then I go, and then the next time I use my brakes, there's no sound in my brakes. So the deer fixed my brakes. Apparently there was something stuck in there, and the needing to slam my brakes on really hard moved it out, or dissolved it, or burnt it up, I don't know.
Dislodged it.
It
probably.
dislodged it,
Yeah.
did whatever it did to it, and it was gone. And that I consider is magic. It's like the relationship I have with the universe is a constant ongoing thing. It's like there's always some kind of an exchange going on between me and the universe. And I recognized that pretty quickly when the next time I used my brakes there was no sound, that the deer had just fixed my brakes.
Of course, you got to watch out what you ask the universe for, though. I walked out of the door one day and said, "Okay, universe, show me what you've got for me today." And we went over to our local mall, and a very large woman fell against me and knocked me down, and I bruised a finger a little bit, but probably saved her life. I thought, okay, I guess that's what the universe wanted with me. Gotta watch what you ask for. Apparently I was to be a cushion, which I didn't object to, since I just got a little bruise on my finger, and she probably would have been seriously injured.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is like, spell work for me is something extreme that needs to be taken care of, that I want to add an extra push to, because the normal stuff isn't working for me. The just talking to the universe, paying attention to the input that I'm getting, watching which way the wind and the tides are moving, and arranging myself to go with them instead of trying to fly against them. And if I think I need an extra push in that direction, and that the tides and the winds are going where I want them to, then I'll do it. But if I see that everything is arrayed against me right now, because that's just sort of the way things are, it's just not going to work no matter what, then I'm not going to waste my energy throwing a bunch of stuff at it that's just going to like be spitting in the wind and throwing it right back at me. But it takes a long time to get to that point where you can, that's what being a witch is feeling the movement of energy and figuring out, okay, I want to get from here to here, and so in between here and here, there's like some rocks, and there's a couple of brick walls, and then there's some people that are in my way, and which is the best method for me to get around these obstacles in order to get to the spot I want to be. And while I'm looking around like this, I find a stream that just happens to be going in exactly the right direction, and then I jump along that and let it push me. You know, so then I don't have to expend as much energy. And driving a car, it's the same kind of thing. I'm paying attention. Like, this person's going to stop and turn, this person's going to jump out in front of me, you know. It's like, I don't have to worry about all the lights are green right now. It's like,
Yeah,
it's a constant awareness of your environment,
Yeah.
and being in it.
It becomes such an everyday thing that, well, yeah, I do something every day, all the time.
You don't even think about it. It's just existence.
Yeah.
Okay, so Louisa says it's also reading the body language. Well, that's a definite yes. I think 90+% of communication is reading body language. Hyperion says, I love Dean Radin. He is a scientist that studies magic. He has a very balanced view of magic and its application to reality. Ah. And XCOM says, ha ha, the holly deer. Holy deer, I think it's supposed to be, right? It says holly, but yeah. The deer were right on top of it. Hyperion says, science is really catching up to the effects of consciousness and observation. Don Hoffman is another modern scientist looking into it too. And it's true, because, we can affect things from a distance and maybe not know how that's working until much later, just like the mycelium. I mean, if the mycelium can carry messages for many miles, and trees can communicate with each other and warn each other about dangers and what's coming, and even actually migrate into a better climate if they see changes coming to the climate, which they have confirmed they can do, then we can communicate along emotional, mental, spiritual pathways with each other and not necessarily know that's what we're doing until later down the road.
Yeah, the mycelium will communicate if one tree has a pest or something like that, and it'll communicate down through the mycelial network up to another tree, and it'll start making whatever it
changes,
does to
chemical
food.
changes,
Yeah,
making them less tasty and protect them against the
protect
infection.
itself from the insects. Yeah.
And it also will send nutrients to other trees that are having a hard time or something like that to support them. And apparently they've just discovered that mother trees recognize their offspring. So I thought that was kind of cool. So John's McMahon says the woods in San Francisco had such a great energy. Hyperion says Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Ruth says, sorry,
true,
I
he did
have
say
to go,
that.
got to go and get food. Love you all. Bye, Ruth. Thank you for being here. But yes, action at a spooky distance. Spooky action at a distance. Or a spooky distance. I don't know what the hell I'm saying at this point.
That's pretty much what he called it, though. Spooky action at a distance.
Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, yeah. Yeah, I've been there. Long time ago. It's probably different now.
So Hyperion, do I assume that 666 relates to Crowley-ish stuff one way or another? Just out of curiosity?
So Jonathan says, being the powerful sorceress you are, married to the powerful sorcerer Ian is, do you think there is a working you can do which would fail? I'm starting to think my workings won't fail. It's weird. Well, if I think I need to do a working, I probably know why I need to do it, and that it's going to work. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother trying. So in that relation, I guess, I don't think there would be a working I would do that would fail, because I probably wouldn't do it if it wasn't going to work.
There can still be ones...
well, something beyond my understanding.
For example, if we tried to do something against our karma that's written, then that would have a very little chance of success unless a person can work through the Akasha and overcome that. But very few people have made it to that level of advancement, so I'm sure there are things I could do that wouldn't work.
Right, but my point is we probably wouldn't do those things because we would know that beforehand. So in that sense, no, there would be nothing that wouldn't work, because if it wasn't going to work, I wouldn't do it. That's what I'm saying. So Hyperion says, yes, Crowley probably did inspire that.
Just wondering.
Yeah. They're going to have a new strange angel, I think. So Angela Blank says, hello, I just found this channel and live. You two have amazing energy and are so wise. I love the altar behind you. To who, if any deities, do you work with? The altar behind me is my Earth North altar. I have 4 altars, one for each direction in this room. This is our temple. And I have an altar to the moon in the corner. And then Ian has his own altar for other workings over there. So I guess that means we have 6 altars in this space. So behind me are our earth deities that we work with. So I have Ganesha and Kuan Yin over here. And 2 of them that were out here that are now in my bedroom altar are Anubis and Kali. So these are northern deities, north deities, earth deities, dark night kind of stuff in some cases, or grounded, because Ganesha is the elephant, so that's like a grounded kind of thing. I've got Kurninos on the wall behind me and the Green Man on the other side. So, each altar's got a different group of deities, and we're very eclectic, and we work with a fair number of them. These are mostly deities that I actually work with.
Did you think to mention a Buddha?
Well, not yet, because I'm not mentioning every deity in the
okay.
room right now, just the ones behind me.
Okay.
Otherwise,
there are a lot of them. All right.
we're going to be here for a while if we do that. But yeah. And I have a collection of gods and goddesses in my bedroom. Ian built me a special shelf for them because there wasn't enough room on my altar for Aphrodite, Artemis, Kali, Lakshmi, Bast or Bastet.
Is it a Groot up there, or is he elsewhere?
He's on the altar, but he's not in the shelf. I'm just thinking of the ones that are on the shelf. There's other ones elsewhere. Oh, and Aurora, my personal deity. Yeah, so he had to build me a shelf so I could put them all on the same space. So Angela says, beautiful. I'm eclectic in a similar way. I finally managed to find my altar setup where I can include most of them. Melissa says, what's your thoughts on jumping timelines? I've seen a lot on this lately. Not sure how I feel about it. What's your thought on it? True or baloney? Well, I've had maybe a couple of possible instances of doing that, but I'm not entirely sure if I did or not. And when I lived up north, I had a couple of encounters with things that didn't make sense to me, where I was listening to the radio, for example, and I was listening to the then President Reagan in the United States talking about dropping an atomic bomb on Grenada, and I thought, oh my God, we started World War III, and I swear that's what I heard, and then nobody else heard that but me, and it didn't happen. So I wasn't sure if it was just in my imagination or if somehow I switched into another alternate timeline. But I don't know. I mean, it's potentially feasible, I suppose, but is it something for us to focus on? I'm not sure if it is, because if we could focus on that, then we could go to a timeline where none of this is going on, and we wouldn't have a pandemic. I mean, so reality kind of has its own idea of what's going on. I think you might get little things potentially, but people like to play with their own imaginations and come up with all sorts of scenarios that they think are cool or fun. So I don't know what kind of credence to give it.
Yeah, that's not something I've ever looked into at all, really.
I had one time when I saw a whole bunch of potential timelines that I wasn't on. I was going up a mountain covered in ice. I thought that the tractors had gone up and laid the salt down, and I was going up to visit David at the time in his cabin to get some typing paper. I was out, and as I went up the hill, I got towards the top of the hill, and it was all ice, and I couldn't make it over the crest of the hill, and so I spun to a stop, and then I was stuck on this long icy road, and I thought, I can back down because I'm not going to die today, because I know when I'm going to die, and it's not today. And so I started backing down the hill, and then as I picked up speed, my car would start to slide over to the edge of the cliff, and then I would stop and get out, and my tire would be like inches from the cliff edge, and I would get back in and move my tire around and start sliding down again, and I ended up going into the ditch on the left side just before I got to the bridge that had no railing, at which point I would have gone over into the gully down there, and I saw my body and my car on the bottom of that mountain as I was walking up the mountain in so many different potential realities. It was like one after another. By the time I got up to David's place, I wasn't quite sure if I was dead or alive at that point, because I'd seen my death so many times, and so I was having a hard time accepting the fact that I actually wasn't dead, that I was alive, and so it was very disconcerting, to say the least. And so in all those other potential timelines, I was seriously injured or dead. So I don't know if that is the same subject, but something like that. So Hyperion says, I saw a news broadcast saying Charles Manson escaped from prison, and he didn't. I don't know it was a time jump or a news station having a brain fart. Well, there's that too. You never know. They say stuff and it turns out not to be true. John says, I know some Wiccan pagans who work with fictional deities. What do you think of this? Well, personally, the amount of energy it would take to work with a fictional deity to build up the energy resources and stuff compared to a deity that's been out for thousands of years.
If you were to choose like your experience with Doctor Strange, though, he was already there as an archetype from the comics.
Yeah, and he helped me, but that was like a subconscious assist, not so much of a, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of the same thing. If the fictional deity has gotten a lot of background or something to it, then it's a lot more likely there'd be something to work with and build up, and they could build it up. And just like the deities that are birthed in
Santeria.
Santeria
yeah.
and that.
So there's a possibility there, but me, I like, generally speaking, working with things that got some definition to them. Jonathan says, do your past lives feel sequential, or do they feel kind of all at once, kind of Akasha-style timelessness? Yeah. They're actually both, but they're not necessarily sequential in the timeline, because some of them are in the past that are going to be in my future, so yeah, kind of all at once.
Yeah, and I don't have any, so I can't comment on that.
Melissa said, I heard it in shamanism. Delighted I asked you. Very interesting to hear your take on it. Angela says, I had an instant where I was on the phone with a friend. The phone went staticky and my friend was muted. I heard several voices saying, I love you. We're here. It hasn't happened since, but it was a surprise. That's interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
Usually I take things like that as a sign from somewhere. I don't know where they come from or what have you, but sometimes the universe tells me to stop doing something and just give it up and do it later, and it usually works much better later, that type of thing, so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting, for sure. That's one of the things that's fun about all of this, though, because, we've all had such different experiences, and yeah. I guess we're about ready to quit at this point, since it's been 1 hour and 31 minutes. But hey, as usual, it's been quite entertaining and interesting and enlightening and fun.
Yes.
So thank you guys.
Thank you everyone for being here and for talking with us.
Really appreciate that. So send me some emails if you have specific questions at Siofra Bradigan or siofrasmagicalcove@gmail.com. Angela says, how time flies when magic is in the air. I hope to catch the live sooner next time. Blessed be. Angela, that's wonderful. I would take that. We had a great chinwag. Thanks all, says John McMahon. Thank you all for participating. I really appreciate it. You make this a lot more interesting. So, bye everybody. Have a wonderful time, and we'll see you next week.